The man's voice cut through the luxurious hum of the store like a blade. "Get out, now!" All around, customers froze. Their hands, once gently brushing the silk suits and gold-rimmed handbags, stopped in mid-motion. The chandeliers above scattered golden light on the scene, making it look like some kind of twisted spotlight had been thrown on one man in the center. That man was Elijah Carter, tall, strong, dressed in jeans and a plain black hoodie that didn't belong in a place where a scarf could cost more than someone's rent. His brown eyes scanned the store calmly, but inside his chest, his heart pounded. Not from fear, but from the effort it took not to speak. The store owner, Richard Halloway, stood with his jaw tight, his voice cold enough to freeze glass. "We don't serve your kind here." He didn't even bother lowering his voice. Customers shifted uncomfortably, their faces a mix of surprise and embarrassment, but no one spoke. Elijah could feel dozens of eyes on him. He also knew exactly what Richard didn't. Elijah wasn't just some random black man walking into an overpriced store. He was undercover. He was here on assignment. And right now, the man who was shoving him toward the door had no idea that within 24 hours, his world would collapse. Richard's hand pushed against Elijah's chest. "Move it," he barked, "before I call the police." Elijah tilted his head slightly, meeting the man's eyes. He could almost taste the arrogance radiating from him. And then Elijah smiled, a small, knowing smile that seemed so out of place. It made Richard pause for a half-second. "You really should be careful who you throw out," Elijah said, his voice low but steady. Richard laughed sharply. "And you should learn where you don't belong." The glass door swung shut behind Elijah as Richard shoved him into the street. The cold evening air hit his face. He took a beat, steadying himself, because he knew exactly what he was going to do next. And the next day, Richard Halloway would regret everything. But that was tomorrow. Today had started very differently. That morning, the city had been quiet, still waking up. Elijah stood in his small apartment kitchen, sipping black coffee and looking over the manila folder on his counter. Inside were surveillance photos, financial documents, and a typed-up case summary that was blunt but damning. Halloway's luxury emporium. On the outside, it was one of the most successful high-end stores in the city, exclusive, expensive, with an air of prestige that made it a magnet for celebrities and wealthy tourists. On the inside, the place was rotten. Reports of shady accounting, possibly moving stolen designer goods, and using its security team to intimidate small vendors. Elijah had been undercover before. Drug rings, stolen car networks, white-collar fraud. But this was different. The orders from his boss at the bureau were clear. Don't go in as an agent. Go in as a regular customer, just another face in the crowd, and see how they treat you. See if the rumors about discrimination were true. And if they were, they'd have more than enough to bring the hammer down. By 11 o'clock a.m., Elijah was walking toward the glass doors of the store, blending in with the lunchtime crowd. His hoodie wasn't an accident. It was part of the plan. This wasn't about pretending to be rich. It was about seeing how they treated someone who didn't look like they belonged in their shiny world. The moment he stepped in, he felt it. The air in the store was cold, not from the temperature, but from the way eyes landed on him. The clerk at the front desk didn't smile. The security guard's gaze sharpened. Two women who were laughing over a handbag suddenly went quiet as he walked past. Elijah kept moving, pretending to browse. He ran his fingers along a leather jacket, pretending to study the stitching while his eyes scanned the layout. Security cameras in every corner, mirrors angled to catch blind spots, and the man himself, Richard Halloway, walking through the store like he owned the air people breathed, which, in here, he probably did. Richard was a tall man with slicked-back silver hair and an expensive navy suit that looked like it had never seen a wrinkle. He didn't just look at people. He inspected them, as if deciding whether they were worth existing in his store. When Richard's eyes fell on Elijah, something in his face shifted. His polite public smile faded into something sharper. He turned, speaking to one of his assistants, and Elijah could see them glancing back at him. The assistant's lips moved. Elijah caught one word: security. He knew where this was going. For the next 10 minutes, Elijah kept browsing, playing his role, but the tension in the room was building like storm clouds. The security guard moved closer, pretending to straighten a display. One clerk actually trailed him between sections, not saying a word, but making sure he knew she was there. And then it happened. Richard himself walked up, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. "You need to leave," Richard said flatly. Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I said so. You're making my customers uncomfortable." "By looking at clothes?" Elijah's voice stayed calm, even though part of him wanted to laugh. Richard didn't answer. Instead, he signaled to the security guard, who stepped in, a hand already reaching toward Elijah's arm. Elijah knew that if he let them manhandle him now, the scene would get ugly. And that was exactly what he needed. Proof. Witnesses. Something undeniable. But before he could decide how far to let this go, Richard's voice turned cold and loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. "We don't serve your kind here." The words hit the air like a slap. A woman near the counter gasped. Someone's phone camera clicked. The security guard froze for a second, glancing between them. Elijah stared at Richard, and in that moment, every instinct in him wanted to drop the act, flash his badge, and watch the color drain from this man's face. But not yet. Not here. Instead, Elijah let Richard shove him toward the door. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He just stepped outside into the cold street, letting the humiliation of the moment hang heavy in the air behind him. Because tomorrow, all of this would flip. That night, back in his apartment, Elijah sat at his desk, scrolling through the video someone had already posted online. It had been filmed from inside the store, shaky, but clear enough to hear Richard's words. The caption read, "Luxury store owner tells black man, we don't serve your kind." The comments section was already exploding. He could almost feel the storm brewing. But as Elijah closed his laptop, a shadow crossed his window. Someone was outside. He stood slowly, moving toward the blinds. And that was when he saw it. A dark figure standing completely still in the alley across the street, watching him. Elijah's body froze, but his mind was already racing. The alley across from his apartment was barely lit. Just one flickering bulb above a rusted door. But it was enough to see that the figure wasn't moving. Whoever it was stood half hidden in shadow, the faint glow catching the side of a hooded face. Elijah's instincts screamed danger. It wasn't the first time someone had tailed him. In undercover work, people who didn't want you poking around often made sure you knew they were watching. But this was different. This was sooner than expected. He reached over to the small table near his couch and picked up his phone. Instead of calling the police because that would blow his cover, he texted a number saved only as J. "Eyes on me. Need a sweep." He set the phone down and kept his gaze on the alley. The figure didn't budge. Not a step, not a twitch, just stood there, watching, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they stepped backward into the darkness and vanished. Elijah didn't move for another full minute. Only when the rumble of a distant train cut through the night did he finally breathe. Whoever they were gone. For now. The phone buzzed. A reply from Jay. On it, "Stay put." Elijah did stay put, but his mind wasn't still. This wasn't random. Richard Halloway must have connections deeper than the Bureau thought. If someone had been sent to follow him already, the case was heating up faster than planned. By morning, the streets were alive again. Buses hissed to a stop, people rushed with coffee cups in hand, and the store, Halloway's luxury emporium, sat under its polished awning like nothing had happened. But inside the Bureau, things were moving. Elijah met his contact, Special Agent Dana Wells, in an unmarked SUV parked 2 blocks from the store. She was tall, with sharp eyes, and a habit of talking fast when she was worried. "You weren't supposed to make contact with him that soon," she said, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. "He made contact with me," Elijah replied, "and he didn't hold back. We've got video already circulating online." "That's good for pressure," Dana admitted, "but it's also going to make him paranoid. And paranoid people make mistakes, or they make problems. You need to tread carefully." Elijah told her about the figure outside his apartment. Dana's expression tightened. Could have been one of his security guys, could have been someone else. Either way, you're being watched. We'll put a car on your street for the next few nights. Low profile. "What's the next step?" he asked. She slid a thin folder onto his lap. Inside were bank statements, suspicious wire transfers, and a list of suppliers. Some legitimate, some likely not. One name was circled in red. "Leon Vargas," Dana said, "Importas, Ter, known for moving counterfeit goods through legitimate fronts. He's been in contact with Halloway 3 times in the last month. If we can connect them, we've got him on federal charges." Elijah studied the file. "So I need to get close enough to see those transactions in person." Dana nodded. "And that means getting back in the store without him recognizing you immediately. Think you can do it?" Elijah smirked. "You know I can." The plan was simple on paper. Change the approach, change the look, and get inside without raising alarms. That afternoon, Elijah swapped his hoodie and jeans for a tailored, grey suit. Not flashy enough to scream wealth, but clean enough to pass as a serious customer. He added glasses, trimmed his beard, and carried a leather briefcase. When he walked through the glass doors again, the reaction was different. The same clerk who had glared at him yesterday now offered a polite smile, not realizing she'd seen him before. He made his way to the back of the store, near a side hallway that led to the storage area. A discreet staff-only sign hung beside it. As he pretended to admire a display case, he caught sight of Richard emerging from that hallway, speaking in a low voice to a man who matched the photo of Leon Vargas from the file. Bingo. Elijah angled himself so he could hear. Shipments coming in Thursday, Richard was saying. We'll mark it as returns. No one will question it. Vargas grunted. And the cash? You'll get it after the weekend. We've got an event, big sales day. I'll move it through the books clean. They started walking toward the front, forcing Elijah to turn and pretend to examine a gold watch. He caught a glimpse of Richard's eyes passing over him, but there was no flicker of recognition. Good. He lingered just long enough to watch them part ways, then slipped out of the store, mind racing. He had enough to get a warrant now, but warrants took time, and time wasn't a luxury they had. That night, Elijah didn't go home. He stayed at a safe house the Bureau kept for active undercover work. But sometime after midnight, he got a text from Jay. Movement on your block again. 2 guys this time. He gritted his teeth. Holloway was getting nervous, maybe even suspicious. The smart move would be to lay low until Thursday's shipment and catch them red-handed. But Elijah knew something. Men like Richard didn't just sit back and wait. When they felt threatened, they lashed out. The question was, who would get hit first? The next day brought a strange calm. Elijah worked his cover job in the morning, blending in, no unexpected shadows following him. By mid-afternoon, he positioned himself across from the store in a small cafe, sipping coffee while keeping an eye on the entrance. Around 4 p.m., a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Out stepped Leon Vargas, carrying a slim metal briefcase. Richard met him at the door, shaking his hand like they were old friends. Elijah's pulse quickened. That briefcase could be payment, fake documents, anything. He snapped a few covert photos with his phone, sending them to Dana instantly. Dana, got them. Stay put. We might move sooner. But before Elijah could type a reply, something in the corner of his vision caught his attention. A man standing near the cafe's entrance, pretending to read a newspaper but glancing at him every few seconds. One of the watchers. And he wasn't alone. A second man entered the cafe and sat 2 tables away, not ordering anything. Both were dressed casually, but their eyes were alert, scanning. Elijah's mind sharpened. He could make a scene and blow his cover, or he could play it cool and figure out what they wanted. He chose the latter, slowly standing, tossing a few bills on the table, and walking toward the back exit. The moment he stepped into the alley, footsteps followed. He turned a corner, quickening his pace, heart thumping. The footsteps quickened too. Then a hand grabbed his cell holder. Elijah spun, his training kicking in, slamming the man's arm into the brick wall. The second man rounded the corner, pulling something from his jacket. It wasn't a gun, it was a photo of Elijah. Richard wants to talk, the first man said, his voice low and threatening. Elijah's grip tightened on the man's arm. Tell Richard I'll see him soon. Then, with a twist, he shoved the man back and bolted down the alley before they could follow. He didn't stop until he reached a crowded street. Back at the safe house, he paced the living room, piecing it together. Richard wasn't just suspicious. He was ready to confront him directly. That could ruin everything. Or it could be the opening Elijah needed. His phone buzzed again. This time, a call from Dana. "Change of plans," she said without preamble. "We're hitting the store tomorrow. That shipment's our window, and we can't risk you getting burned before then." Elijah nodded to himself. "I'll be ready." He was ready. But when tomorrow came, something happened that no one, not even Elijah, could have predicted. Because before the Bureau could make their move, Elijah was taken. Elijah's head throbbed before his eyes even opened. His wrists ached from tight plastic restraints, and the smell of damp concrete filled his nose. Somewhere above him, water dripped steadily, echoing like a ticking clock. When his vision cleared, he saw he was in a basement. The walls were raw cement, the single light bulb above swinging slightly, throwing shadows across the room. A metal chair sat in front of him, and in that chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, was Richard Halloway. No suit this time, no polished smile, just a black sweater, jeans, and eyes that were colder than steel. "You've been busy," Richard said, his voice calm, in a way that was more unsettling than if he'd been shouting. "Asking questions, hanging around my store, taking an interest in my business." Elijah said nothing. Rule 1. Never give your enemy more than they already know. Richard leaned back, studying him. "I don't know who you work for, but I know you're not just some guy looking for a watch. So I'm going to ask you once. Who sent you?" Still, Elijah kept his mouth shut. Richard's lips twitched into a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He nodded toward the far corner of the room. One of the two men from the cafe stepped forward, carrying a duffel bag. He unzipped it, pulling out tools, wrenches, pliers, and something Elijah recognized instantly: a stun gun. "You see, I don't like when people stick their noses where they don't belong," Richard continued. "So you can tell me the truth now, or we can make this unpleasant." Elijah's pulse quickened, but outwardly, he stayed calm. "You think you scare me?" Richard's smile vanished. "No, but pain has a way of loosening tongues." The man with the stun gun stepped closer. Elijah's mind was already spinning, not with fear, but with timing. Somewhere out there, Dana was waiting for his check-in. If he missed it, the Bureau would know something was wrong. The question was whether they'd find him in time. Hours earlier, Dana had been in the command center watching traffic cam feeds from the area near Elijah's safe house. When he didn't answer his phone, she felt the first prick of worry. 10 minutes later, worry turned to alarm. She called Jay. "Check his place now." When Jay arrived, the apartment was empty. No signs of a break-in. But Elijah's phone was gone, and the back door had fresh scuff marks near the lock. That was all Dana needed. She put out an internal alert. Possible abduction. High-priority asset. Back in the basement, the first crackle of the stun gun lit the room in blue for a split second. Elijah gritted his teeth. Richard leaned forward again. "Last chance, who are you?" Elijah gave him a look that was half defiance, half bait. "I'm the guy who's going to watch you go down." Richard's jaw clenched. He nodded to the man with the stun gun. The burst hit Elijah's side, and pain ripped through his body like fire. He bit back a shout, forcing his breathing steady as the current stopped. "You're stubborn," Richard said, almost admiringly, "but stubborn men break." What Richard didn't know was that Elijah had already counted 3 distinct sounds above them. Footsteps, different from the 2 men in the room. Either there were more guards upstairs, or the bureau was closer than he thought. Dana and her team were, in fact, closer. They'd tracked the black SUV from the cafe to a warehouse district on the edge of town. The problem? There were at least 6 buildings it could have entered, and no cameras inside. She pulled her agents together. We sweep every building, quietly. We don't tip him off until we know Elijah's location. The team split into pairs. Dana took the second building, a 3-story brick structure with boarded-up windows. Inside, the air smelled of oil and rust. Somewhere below, she thought she heard voices. Richard stood now, pacing slowly in front of Elijah. "I could make you disappear, you know. People vanish in this city every day." Elijah's breathing was steady again, but his heart pounded. "If you're going to do it, do it. Otherwise, you're wasting my time." Richard stopped pacing. His eyes narrowed, then flicked to the man with the bag. "Get the tape. We'll move him." That was Elijah's moment. As the man turned, Elijah shifted his wrists, feeling the plastic restraints strain against the small, jagged edge of the chair frame. One sharp twist. The tie snapped. In the same motion, he lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into Richard's chest. The chair tipped, crashing to the floor, and Elijah rolled, grabbing the stun gun before the other man could react. A crackle of blue liquor, and the man went down. Richard scrambled back, reaching for the door, but Elijah was already on his feet. That's when the door burst open. Dana stood there, weapon raised, with 2 agents flanking her. "FBI! Hands where I can see them!" Richard froze, then slowly raised his hands. The relief hit Elijah in a rush, but it lasted only seconds. Because behind Dana, another figure appeared in the hallway. It was Leon Vargas, and he wasn't raising his hands. He was holding a gun. "Drop it!" Dana shouted. Vargas didn't. Instead, he stepped into the room, gun swinging between Dana and Elijah. "You're not taking him," Vargas said. "Not alive." And in that tense, airless moment, Elijah realized the real danger wasn't over. The air in the basement went razor sharp. Dana's stance was steady, her arms locked, finger ready on the trigger. Elijah stayed still, muscles coiled, eyes locked on Vargas's weapon. Richard, still with his hands raised, looked between them like he was calculating which way the scales would tip. "Put the gun down, Vargas," Dana said, her voice low but firm. Vargas's mouth curled into a sneer. "You have no idea what you're walking into, Agent." His finger twitched against the trigger. "This isn't about your little investigation. This is about survival." "Whose survival?" Elijah asked, his voice even. "The people who matter," Vargas said. "The ones with the money. The ones who keep this city moving." "You mean the ones bleeding it dry?" Elijah shot back. Dana's eyes flicked toward him for half a second, a warning to stay quiet. But Elijah knew silence wasn't going to stop a man like Vargas. You had to break his focus. "You think they'll protect you?" Elijah continued. "You're a pawn to them. The second you're a liability, you're gone." Vargas's jaw tightened, but his aim didn't waver. Better to be their pawn than your prisoner. The silence stretched. Every second felt like a stretched wire, one wrong move away from snapping. And then the wire snapped. Richard moved first. Not toward Dana, not toward Vargas, but toward the light switch by the door. The room plunged into darkness. A gunshot split the air. Elijah dropped, rolling toward the sound of Vargas's boots. Another shot rang out, sparks flashing briefly from the concrete wall. Dana shouted, but her voice was drowned by the chaos. The scuffling, the thud of boots, the crash of the overturned chair. In the dark, Elijah's hand found Vargas's wrist. He twisted hard, feeling the gun jar loose. The weapon hit the floor with a metallic clang, and Elijah kicked it away. Someone grabbed him from behind, Richard, and shoved him into the wall. Elijah drove his elbow back, catching Richard in the ribs. The man grunted, but didn't let go. Light exploded back into the room as Dana found the switch. In that split second of clarity, Elijah saw Vargas diving for the kicked gun. Dana fired. The shot caught Vargas in the shoulder. He dropped to the floor with a cry, clutching his arm. Richard's grip loosened just enough for Elijah to slam him forward into the table, pinning him there. "Stay down," Dana barked, covering Vargas while her agents moved in to cuff both men. For a moment, all Elijah could hear was his own breathing. The adrenaline was still pounding in his veins, but the danger, at least for now, was over. The warehouse basement became a crime scene within minutes. More agents arrived, securing evidence, photographing the room, bagging the weapons. Richard and Vargas were taken out in separate vehicles, flanked by 2 agents each. Dana turned to Elijah. "You okay?" "I've been better," he said, rubbing his wrists where the restraints had dug in. "But I've also been worse." Her mouth twitched into the faintest ghost of a smile. "Let's get you checked out. Then you can tell me exactly what you learned." Hours later, in a safe FBI facility, Elijah sat in an interrogation room. Not as a suspect, but as the man with the key to unraveling a case that had just gotten much bigger. They weren't just running scams through the store, Elijah said, leaning forward. They were laundering money, jewelry sales, fake invoices, offshore accounts. Millions moved every month. Dana nodded, taking notes. "And Vargas? Dirty cop. He's their insurance. Keeps certain cases from ever making it to court, scares off witnesses, maybe even plants evidence when they need it." She tapped her pen against the notepad. "We've suspected him for years, but we've never been able to pin him down." "You will now," Elijah said. For a moment, it almost felt like things were turning a corner. But Elijah had been in the game long enough to know that when you cut one head off a snake, another often grew in its place. That truth came knocking, literally. The next morning, he was in a temporary safe house, sipping coffee, when there was a knock at the door. He checked the peephole. No one there. His gut tightened. He opened the door just a crack, enough to see the small envelope on the ground. No markings. He picked it up, tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. It was Dana, standing outside her apartment building, her face caught, mid-laugh. And across the bottom, in black marker, were the words, "You're next." Elijah's grip tightened on the photo. His mind raced, not with fear, but with calculation. Whoever sent this wasn't bluffing. The game had just shifted. Elijah stared at the photograph, the steam from his coffee curling into the cold air between them. Whoever had left it knew where Dana lived, knew enough to follow her without being spotted, and most importantly, they wanted Elijah to know it. He set the mug down, the sound sharp against the counter. The safe house suddenly felt smaller. the walls closer. He knew he couldn't just call Dana. Phones could be tapped. So he wrote one word on a sticky note. Meet. Then the time and a location, an old disuse. The parking garage near the harbour. No cameras, no security, no chance for unwanted ears. Dana was already there when he arrived, leaning against a pillar with her arms crossed. You said it was urgent, she said. Elijah handed her the photo. Found it outside my door this morning. Her expression darkened. They're trying to rattle you. They're trying to rattle you, Elijah corrected. This is personal. They've lost Vargas and Richard. That means someone higher up is scrambling, someone who doesn't like loose ends. Dana's eyes narrowed. You have a name? Elijah nodded. Vincent Moretti. Owns half the luxury stores in the city. He's the one Richard worked for, and he's the one who ordered Vargas to keep me quiet. How do you know? Because I planted a bug in Richard's watch before I got grabbed, Elijah said, his voice low. Picked up a call from Moretti himself. He wants you out of the picture before you testify. Dana's gaze hardened into steel. Then we hit him before he hits us. The plan was fast and brutal. Moretti had a penthouse office in one of his skyscrapers. Glass walls, expensive art, the kind of place where men like him felt untouchable. They went in posing as buyers for a high-profile security contract, the kind of deal Moretti's ego wouldn't let him pass up. Dana carried a briefcase with documents. Elijah carried a sleek black bag with more dangerous contents. Inside the penthouse, Moretti was exactly as Elijah had pictured. Tall, silver hair, slicked back. A smile as sharp as a blade. Agent Dana, he said, extending a hand like he was greeting an old friend. And you must be the man who caused all this trouble. Elijah didn't shake it. I'm the man who's about to end it. Moretti's smile twitched. You talk a big game for someone walking into my office without the backup. Dana placed the briefcase on his desk and clicked it. Open. Inside was a stack of photographs. Richard in handcuffs, Vargas bleeding on the warehouse floor. Bank statements, offshore transfers, wiretap transcripts. Moretti's face drained of color. You're finished, Dana said simply. He reached for the phone on his desk. But Elijah was faster. In a single motion, he swept the handset away and dropped the black bag on the table. The zipper peeled back, revealing a small recording device. I've been live streaming this conversation to the FBI for the last 10 minutes, Elijah said. Everything you've said is already in evidence. Moretti's hand froze. Outside the office, the sound of heavy boots filled the hall. A team of FBI agents burst in, weapons raised. Vincent Moretti, you're under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and attempted murder of a federal agent, one of them said. As they cuffed him, Moretti shot Elijah a glare so venomous it could have burned through steel. This isn't over. Oh, it's over, Elijah said. You just don't know it yet. The next day, the headlines were everywhere. Billionaire luxury store owner arrested in FBI sting. Customers flocked to his stores, not to buy but to watch federal agents haul away jewelry, ledgers, and computers. And the employees who'd once turned their noses up at certain customers, they were suddenly very polite, offering water to everyone who walked in. Dana found Elijah standing across the street from one of the shuttered stores. Feels good, doesn't it? She asked. Elijah watched. as another crate of seized goods was loaded into a van. Yeah, but it's more than that. It's a reminder. A reminder of what? That no matter how high someone thinks they are, the fall is always closer than they think. Dana smiled faintly. And you? You done going undercover for a while? Elijah gave a small laugh. You know me. Trouble has a way of finding me. They stood there a moment longer, watching the empire crumble. The man who'd thought he could throw Elijah out of his store like trash was now locked behind bars. His wealth and influence stripped away. Karma had come, swift and final, and for Elijah, that was enough. The end.